In this video, we will be adding collision to our game, so when the boulder and the player collides, the player gets destroyed. So to add collision to our game, the first thing we will need is that the two objects that will collide will have colliders on them. So for our player here, we have this little square, our player, and we will add a box collider. As you can see, if I type collider, there's a bunch of different colliders, but since this is a square, a box collider makes the most sense. This is a 2D game, so remember to use the box collider 2D. And then we will also add, and then we have our boulder, which essentially works as our enemy. And here we will add another collider. So this is circled, so we will add a circle collider 2D. Unity actually handles the collision by itself. So if we run our game, you can see these two objects will collide and our boulder will actually push our player out of the screen. But now we need some functionality for this collision to actually do something for our game loop. So we will go to our player, and I will actually head into our scripts folder and create a new script, and I will call it collision handler because this script will handle our collision. So we will go to our player and drag our script on it as a new component. Then we will open up our collision script and we will delete the start and the update method as we won't be needing those in this script. And a very good thing about Unity is that the game engine actually handles collision logic for us. We just have to implement the correct methods. And when I say methods, I do this because there are actually multiple ways of handling collision in Unity. There are two main methods. I will show both of them to you right now. So the first one being OnCollisionEnter. You can see we have OnCollisionEnter and OnCollisionEnter2D. We will use the 2D one for this game. And the other method would be OnTriggerEnter. And again, we have OnTriggerEnter and OnTriggerEnter2D. You can see both of these methods come with a parameter each. I will explain both of these parameters in a minute. But first, let's figure out which kind of collision we want in our game. Because what do we want to do in here? Well, we want to remove the player from the game. Let's just say first, we test out the OnCollisionEnter. But if we were to use a regular collision method, then the two objects in our game right now, the boulder and the player, can actually physically interact with each other. Let's say we hit it from the side like this. Now you can see our player is moved out from the scene and it is actually in constant rotation because of this physical interaction. If we wanted the game to continue, well, this is not the kind of logic we want in our game. But if we go here to the boulder and we go to its collider component, the circle collider 2D, and we use this isTrigger, we tick this box, then when collision happens in our game, as you can see, it actually moves straight through. And on screen, when you see it just moving straight through, it might seem like nothing is happening. But let's just go to our OnTriggerEnter. Let's try using the debug.log. Say collision happened. Let's try to save this script. And now when we run our game, collision happens. And you can see here it debugs to the console, collision happened. So even though it's passing straight through, then we're still registering a collision. So that's why for this project we will not use the OnCollisionEnter. We will just use the OnTriggerEnter. If you were to untick this isTrigger and you're using the OnTriggerEnter, nothing would actually happen. If, however, that this was ticked, but in here instead of OnTriggerEnter we use the OnCollisionEnter, then again nothing would happen. So if at some point your collision in your game doesn't work the way you expected it to, then it's always a good idea to check the collider and to check if the isTrigger is checked or not. But now we've confirmed that this method actually works, so let's remove our debug log. We won't be needing that anymore. As we noted earlier, when this method is created, it comes with parameters. Well, what is this parameter? As you can see, it's a type collider 2D. What collider 2D are we talking about? Well, the player is the game object which has this collision handler script attached to it, and this collider 2D is a reference to what it collides with. So in this case, this would be the circle collider 2D on our boulder, which is also why we've set the boulder to trigger and not our player, as this checks, well, does the thing we collide with have a trigger on it? So now what do we want to do? We want to remove the player from the game. So let's just say that the thing we actually wanted to remove from the game is our boulder. To remove a game object from the game during runtime, we would use the built-in Unity method called destroy. And as you can see, this removes a game object, component, or asset. Well, what does it take as parameters? It takes an object. So a game object. If we wanted to access the thing we are colliding with, we would actually use this collision variable. But this collision variable is only a reference to the collider 2D. So were we to run this script, we would actually destroy the circle collider component. We want to destroy the game object that the collider is attached to. That's why we use collision.gameObject. So let's save this script, jump back into Unity and run our game, and now when we collide, the boulder is destroyed. So here is the challenge for you. Change the logic of this method So instead of destroying our boulder, we destroy the player. I'll give you a quick sec to pause the video, try this out for yourself, and then you can come back to see my solution. Now instead of accessing our collision, we actually just want to access the game object that this script is attached to. We do this by typing game object. So now this references our player instead of what it collides with. If we save the script and jump back into Unity, now our player is destroyed. Now at this point you might be tempted to think we're done, but we are missing one small detail. The thing being, if you were to develop further in this game, maybe the boulder is not the only object you like in the game scene next to the player. For instance, just to showcase this, I've added a triangle to our game. Let's just say this is some kind of pickup, some kind of power up we have in our game, and this is also a trigger and has a collider on it, but if we collide with this, instead of picking it up, the player is destroyed. This is not what we want to happen. Therefore, we need to only destroy the player or remove the player from the game if it is actually a boulder we're hitting. So to make sure that we are actually colliding with a boulder, we need to check for something. But what do we need to check for? For this, Unity actually has a very smart thing called tags. You can see here, if we go to any game object, it actually has tags. We used a tag in the last video where we set the screen boundaries. See, our camera has the tag main camera. Well, we can actually set a tag for a boulder. We have these tags which are built in into Unity. Player, game controller, camera, etc, etc. These don't really fit for our boulder, so we can add a tag. Here we have a list of tags. You can hit the plus sign and then you can add a new tag. I will just add the tag of boulder. Then you go back into the boulders inspector, and now on your list of tags you see a boulder has been added. So we tag this as boulder, and what we do now is that we go into a script and we use an if statement, and we can check that if, so we can access our collision variable. We can use the dot to access the extension methods, and we can use the compare tag, so it checks the game object's tag against the defined tag. The defined tag being what we set as a string in these parentheses. So we can set the tag of boulder, make sure to spell it right, as it won't work if you misspell, and then in here we want to destroy our game object. So now when we run a game, we can collide with this triangle, nothing happens, but when we collide with a boulder, the player is removed from the game. That is actually all for this tutorial on collision. In the next episode, we will be adding a score feature to the game, so when you successfully avoid the boulder, your score is increased by 1. If this video helped you out, please consider leaving a like and a comment, as this helps me out massively, and subscribe for more content. Thank you for watching.